Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Talkin Design. I'm Matt.
And I'm Caity.
And I'm Talin.
Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Today we're joined by Talin. I'm good. How are you both?
We're good.
Good. Great to see you, Matt, as always.
Good to see you too.
Not enough opportunity to see you both. So I'm going to relish this opportunity. So
Matt's up there in Canada. I'm
Yeah.
way over here. You're way out there.
Yeah.
But here we are together.
Bringing the coast together.
Yeah, in the studio.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you today, Talin. So thanks for joining us. I wish I could join in New York, but
next time.
I'm stuck up here in Canada.
We'll get you
There's
over
always
here.
a future opportunity.
There's always future. So today, I think we have a few topics of discussion. The first off, I apologize in advance if anything goes wrong with my setup today, because I'm in Beta City over here with the new webcam setup on iOS and Mac OS. So it looks pretty good for a phone camera, I'd say. But Talin, I think you just got on theme with this branding, a new purple iPhone.
New purple iPhone matches perfectly. I coordinated with the show today.
Or order it?
No, I think I ordered it at like the moment became available.
Yeah.
I just like hit the order.
Your setup right here. You got purple Post-its, purple drinks.
I'm ready. I'm all purpled out. I was like, I had to go for the
Matt and
Caity, the midnight purple, just so I knew. I think that's what they call it.
It's also the color of our show, so you're on brand.
I'm on brand. Yeah, it's amazing. But connecting the devices, connecting the ecosystem, being able to first they started with the transfer, what they call it with the iPad.
Yeah.
They had the seamless sort of transition to the iPad, almost like a secondary screen device, and now bringing in the camera, that's an exciting. I mean, talk about multi-screen, multi-channel. That's a theme that a lot of the team here has been thinking about and working on for a while. Just designers, we're no longer designing for just a responsive screen. We're designing for experiences that can stretch across many different screens. And how do you piece it all together? That's a cool problem.
Right. When you say here, you mean Adobe.
Adobe. Yes, I mean Adobe. Sorry.
Can you tell everyone what you do here?
Yeah. That's a good place.
Yeah.
I'm just assuming.
Yeah.
So Talin Wadsworth. I'm a principal designer at Adobe. Just got back off my 10-year sabbatical, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Where'd you go?
We went to Ireland and the UK.
Very nice.
For 5 weeks.
Oh,
amazing.
Wow.
So I've been at Adobe, been on some great projects, Adobe XD, Creative Cloud Libraries, Adobe Sketch for the iPad, and Creative Cloud was my very first project here. So
is Sketch now Fresco?
Sketch turned into, I guess so. Okay. I guess that's how that went. Yeah. So, and plus a bunch of other great projects, worked with some amazing people here in my time. It's been an amazing. I can't believe I've been here this long. It's been pretty amazing. So just
a little how I met Talin. Actually, we were talking about this morning. So Talin and his team of researchers and UX and product came to the Atlantic Records office where I worked previously to Adobe, and I don't know, just good memories there. Walking around the office. Walking through our workflows and their team helping us out. And,
a pre-pandemic time,
yes,
for sure. And then all of a sudden, Caity was here.
And then
officially at Adobe. Amazing.
Yeah. So we're kind of reminiscing. Yeah. And then so today, what are you up to? Are you allowed to talk about it?
Today, I'm working on a lot of really interesting projects. Some stuff that's maybe a little early, but we could. I can't talk specifically about what it is, but we can talk generally. You can get a sense of that from the things that I'm excited about and interested in.
All right.
For sure. Because for me, I think the one thing that's been true here is it's one big project. While I might be working on any individual product or idea, it's all, to me, I've approached it as one big project, which is how has our work transformed as designers and creatives, particularly when it comes to our tools and the way we use them, the way we think about them even.
Yeah.
And then how does that change how we work in the future? And then what is the impact of that? And so I love that relationship between designers and creatives and their tools, and how those tools can really facilitate or influence outcomes. Again, if a lot of times I think designers are great about piecing together any workflow that they can find just to be able to communicate in the mediums that they want to communicate. They're figuring it out. That our brains are constantly looking for new ways to communicate our ideas. And so that's been the thing to me is just been fascinating with that. How do we use tools? How do we get them and shape them to the things to create the things that we want to make?
And how is that really? I mean, have you noticed trends or shifts since the pandemic and how we're all working?
No, definitely. They were there before. I think the pandemic really just put a fine point on them.
Yeah.
That again, one of the things that we really tried to hit on, especially at the start of XD, was that design was more than just the tool, and it was more than just the pixels or the artifact of the pixels that you were creating. That was a moment, a part of the process. But as our work streams got more complex, and we're designing digitally, we're designing for the web and for native apps, we're working with all these other people, right? We're not just now working with a client, we're now working with developers and other stakeholders, and we have this halo of people that it takes to create these very complex choreographed experiences. And that there was a ton of work being done around the design, in communicating the design, in getting other people, involved and excited about the design. The designer's work doesn't begin and end in the tool. It encompasses that whole end-to-end process. And so I think, to me, that's what I think the pandemic finally drew a fine point on, was how important that work was, and actually how kind of broken it was. We would, first, I'm going way back before, even XD, we would make the design, and then we make a PDF, right? We were curating the Illustrator.
Toss it over the fence.
Right? We were curating the Illustrator document and saying, okay, I'm not going to show the client all of this stuff. I'm only going to show them this thing, this
copy,
piece.
paste it, put it in a presentation.
Exactly. And then I would make a PDF, and then I would send the PDF for review, or I would print it out and I would mock it up on a bunch of foam core boards, and then we would go present it, and then there'd be rounds of emails. Like that's creative work.
Now it's like, come into my file, all you people.
Exactly. And we've just cut out so much inefficiency and so much of that work, right? Why wouldn't you gravitate towards a tool that facilitated that, right? Like you naturally would. I mean, actually the precursor to that was really Dropbox, to me.
Tell me more.
Where when I first joined Adobe, Matt, you may have run into this in the past too, that the team that I joined, they weren't using Dropbox when I joined. So this was, it was 11 years ago. When I joined the team, they were not using Dropbox internally. They were all still, at the end of the night, taking all of their local files from their laptops and then uploading it to an FTP server. And I was like, what are you all doing? Like the just the amount of the potential for losing stuff or not being up to date with stuff. I'm like, how are you doing your
big
jobs?
Time machine with the Apple.
That
was me. It's like what you had to do at the end of every day.
Exactly. And we were all doing this because again, this is how we were working. Yeah. And so then when you bring in something like a Dropbox, now all of a sudden where all the files are. Well, where's Caity's file? It's right there in that folder, right? And I can see it. Not just you can see it. I can see it, and I can see when you've worked in it. So to me, that was that first moment where things were we were cutting out inefficiencies. We were looking for ways to share information in real time, rather than having to be like, where's the latest version? Does Matt have it? Does Caity have it? Who touched it last? Like we've been on this project. And again, it's really coincided with me joining Adobe. And that to me has been the larger project of my time here, is really trying to shine a light on the work does not begin and end in the tool. Right.
Wait, do you think folders will go away, and files, and that structure of how we store and manage assets?
I don't know. What do you think, Matt? Have you ever found a time when you're like, damn it, folders?
No. Usually they come later on in the process, and it's, I have this giant dump of content and screenshots, and it's usually screenshots. If we could automate screenshots of inspiration online or the random thing I saw that I needed to document, if there was some way to process that and then put it into folders, that would be great. But I need folders. That's a great point. And Caity, what about you? How do you think about folders?
I still file things at home physically with mail and stuff.
And why do you do that?
Just how we function. I don't know, just how I can keep up with everything, because I'm afraid to lose. It's so funny. I'm afraid to lose anything, so I got to keep that piece of paper, which is silly. I mean, I really got to get into Adobe Capture and scan everything, and get off of.
But we don't, right? Because it's an extra step, and it's hard. I think one of the things that. So I've been involved with a variety of projects in my time at Adobe where we've really gotten excited about killing the folder. That was our big, innovation was we're going to everything in the cloud is flat. And then we're going to be able to tag everything, and then we're going to be able to then generate like views based on the like I can get just as geeked out with technology as the next person. But that doesn't mean it's the right move for the user. And I think one of the things that I love to do is really ask people like, well, let's get down to the heart of like what a folder does for you. Like folder from a technology standpoint might be old school, might constrain us in ways that prevent us from scaling or doing really cool things on the back end. But that's a whole separate conversation. Sure. The experience of a folder, similar to like why we still file things physically, like our brain, it's a construct. It's a tool that we use to do a certain job. And for your purposes, it's like, so I know where everything is, right? You said that. And, Matt, very similar to you, like our mind almost can it almost helps us put it in its place. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean folders are good or bad. Folders can get really bad.
They have their moment. Yeah.
They have their, but they So I think that we can look at folders and say, oh, they're very old school. But if we can really get down to the heart of like, what is a folder doing? I can't say that we'll ever get rid of them,
of that structure,
but that we'll find maybe an experience that could be more valuable. Yeah. But again, it has a high bar to meet, right? If I label a folder old ideas and I put all the old ideas in the folder, I know where that is. Like I can see it in my brain. And everyone else, it communicates to Caity and to Matt, oh, this is our project. This is where all the old ideas are. And it helps us locate that in time. So I think that we'll never get away from a construct, an organizational idea of a folder. Yeah. But we might be visualizing it in different ways. I could see, maybe. Yeah. But again, have we gotten there? I don't know. Like
designing with my VR headset and I pull up my folders in front of me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and like, physical locations. Right. Like, I mean, that's valuable. Yeah. Like, we know like it's in the drawer over there and it's in this folder. Yeah. Those things help us organize and understand our world, especially when it gets really complex.
I have a junk desktop folder that I just name every year, desktop 2022, and I just throw everything in there. It's like the junk drawer at home, like in your desk or something. It's just like, and everything clean off my desktop goes here.
You may get the one that has gone away from me is actually my junk folder on the desktop. That's called the morgue. Yeah. It's very old idea from print shops back in the day where they would have this folder of like clippings and like interesting art, interesting inspirational stuff. And this mentor of mine had worked in a press shop and had told me about this idea of the morgue. But actually, those types of things have gone away from me because those are the types of things that now live online. They live in Pinterest. They live in other. So, like again, I think that folders and communicating location and organizational, blocks could be time, it could be space, it could be a number of things. Like those are there to stay, but we've found other tools or other ways to offload maybe some of the things that we were doing that, again, like nobody's organizing stuff in Google Documents because search is just so good. Like we're not organizing in folders there. So again, it's interesting to see like where are we not doing it? Where is it valuable? Where is it not? Like those are really interesting. So
that's a good point. Yeah. All right.
I think naming's interesting too, not to continue talking about folders, but like we naturally have a tendency to want to group things. Mm-hmm. I think the old ideas and where I stumble usually is how you organize things over time or name things over time changes. Mm-hmm. So old, you might have this one concept of the contents of a folder, but then 2 years later, you're working on a new project and your concepts changed and you're like, I just don't know where to find that anymore because I've named it, or I would have named it something differently now than when I did. So I think that's my biggest struggle with folders, especially as you get into the old hard drives from offloading your old phone from high school or something. I didn't have a phone in high school, but university. And then you're like, it's almost like an exploration. You can open up a folder to the past, and I think there's inspiration in that too. But naming is a pain. So.
And and different mediums or different projects require different things, And I have looked at and had been working with some engineers working on, AI, ML, where again you or not even that really just like pulling out common threads, being able to say, take like a design document and then quickly, shuffle its view from like spatial on the pasteboard, groupings, to like drawing connections, like show me all of the, iPhone artboards, in a document that may contain many other sizes of artboards, or like show me all the web, like I think there's an opportunity for us also to do more dynamic creation of groupings, and then allow the designer then to make a choice,
and then have the technology help us make those
choices. So I think that's, and we see this in I think photo apps are the cutting edge of this, right? The ways in which iOS is displaying information. First, it starts with people. Show me all the photos with Katie, or show me all the photos with Matt, or places.
Oh, I'm always constantly like looking up the place and year. I'm like, one time in June of like last year.
So it's great that we can create an album that's like, Katie and Talin tear up New York, but like at the same time, like we can also break that down in different ways. And that's where the computer or the technology can really show us new ways, new connections. So I think there's a lot of potential there too,
Yeah. Speaking of potential, like with AI and machine learning, what are your thoughts there? What do you, are they coming after our jobs?
As all the think pieces, I watched a video the other day that talked about how we're in like the stages of mourning in a way, like where he's like, and the person,
disagree.
The vlogger was like walking us through, he was like categorizing all different think pieces about AI and
funny.
ML, like
it does look dim when you do it.
Yeah, it's like first is, I don't even remember what those categories are, but arguing, and then acceptance, and then so that was a really dark view of it.
Yeah.
But I've been having my own little journey with Midjourney. Have either of you used Midjourney or Dolly?
Dolly's been coming up. I talked about it all weekend with friends.
Yeah.
I've been dabbled in, but people are scared by it. They think it's cool, but then they're like, oh no.
Yeah.
Like, what was the art that won a prize?
Oh yeah, that one.
That one.
That one. And was in Colorado.
Arizona or somewhere. Like a painting won a contest, and it was like completely just
generated by AI.
All computers.
Have you used either of those, Matt? Have you used Dolly?
I have not. I need to make time. Our friend Howard Pinsky's walked me through some of the tools and shown me some tricks and what's possible, and it's wild.
Pretty wild.
But for now, it's pretty much following the Twitter chatter around the conversation. So
yeah.
Well, you mentioned Dolly and another.
Midjourney is the other one.
What's Midjourney?
So Midjourney, I like Midjourney a lot.
Okay.
That's the one I've been using. Dolly is almost a little too technical. Midjourney, I think, is a little more stylized, a little more designer. I think there's something that excites me about it because of that.
Yeah.
So I've been using Midjourney. Midjourney was different about that is it's a Discord chatbot.
Oh, interesting.
So there's no interface for it like Dolly. Like Dolly has a specific sort of its own domain interface. Midjourney is all run through Discord.
Okay, wait. Do you want to tell people what Dolly?
So Dolly from OpenAI Labs. Dolly is a how do you want to call it? A semantic image generator, maybe something like that was a way to categorize it, right? Think about it, right? Where you can input a series of words, and it will do its best to generate that image, an image of that, a visual image representation of those words. Basically having built a model upon, and I don't know what the exact numbers are, but basically like they went and scraped galleries on the web.
Yeah.
Basically. So Dolly is essentially generating images based on your words from as a founding sort of library of reference. Like you could, not the totality of imagery on the web, but there is some source of like a bunch of created work that has been done by artists, designers, others, and it's essentially pulling from that and then generating, compositing an image from that, matching your words.
I did like tiger airplanes.
Yes.
That's an interesting one. You either got planes that were tiger striped or tigers flying and also turned into a jet. It was really weird.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah.
I could spend hours on that.
Oh, it could be. It's fascinating.
So that's Dolly.
So, and then Midjourney is similar, where you now instead of having its own like web interface, and Dolly is a web portal. It's in beta right now, so you have to request access. And then it has its own UI, it has its own sort of user interface, and you can go in there and you use basically like only with words,
and just with a chatbot.
That one is its own sort of service, but Midjourney is a Discord bot. So it's a similar. I don't know. Again, I'm not a technical person in that way, so I can't speak to the similarities or differences, but they have a different experience. So Midjourney feels much more like you're joining a community because you're joining a Discord server, and then you use a series of prompts in Discord to essentially do the same thing, enter in a phrase or series of words, and then it will, in the Discord channel, display the results.
Okay.
So a little different, bit different. Yeah, really interesting though.
And everyone can see that.
Everyone can see that, right? Which I think is fascinating.
That is cool.
It's really cool.
And it just keeps getting smarter then.
It does. It's so you're in this big long scroll of a channel, and you're seeing the Midjourney like bot like do its thing based on other, you're seeing everybody's prompt. So you're seeing it happening in real time.
Yeah.
And so I was inspired by a friend of mine, designer I've known for a long time. He was doing a project on Instagram where we have a little book club that we're all a part of. And he had been taking one of those books that we've read and inputting into Midjourney phrases or ideas from that book, and then generating imagery from it and then posting it on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that's cool. And I've been watching Rings of Power right now.
Yes.
I'm a Tolkien nut, going like way back.
Watch the pilot.
Yeah. Yeah. I read The Hobbit when I was in like first or second grade. And then from then on, I've just been obsessed. So I've been watching Rings of Power, which is based on lore that Tolkien, a lot of lore, really deep cuts. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to inspire by my friend. So I started a Midjourney project where I was taking the Silmarillion, which is the history of Middle Earth, which Rings of Power is roughly based on, and then using those phrases from the book to generate artwork in Midjourney.
Oh, I'd love to see these.
Oh yeah, it's on Instagram. You can find it on Instagram. If you find me at Mr. Talin, I'll have a link there. But it's called the Dream of the Aenor, which the Aenor are the celestial beings of Middle Earth.
I saw this pop up on my Instagram feed. I'm like, who is this person?
Yeah,
because it's like a very mystical looking.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So
maybe we should have pulled up his Instagram.
I know we should have pulled him.
You just so it's to the camera.
Oh, it's not going to focus on it. The focal distance is not great. But yeah, so I thought, okay, I'll go do this. So I've been experiencing Midjourney with this project.
Yeah.
And when I was generating some of these images, this cool thing was happening where, again, I was using this prompt, seeing these images be generated, and other people saw it, and they started. Again, the Midjourney is their interface. It gives you 4 choices as it generates from the prompt, and then you can do one or two things. You can upscale, so it can go and provide more detail to the image, or you can create variations.
Oh, that's cool.
Of any of those 4 choices.
And anyone can do that.
Yeah, and so anyone can do that, and so so someone started generating versions of the thing that I was prompting.
Yeah.
So there was this really cool thing happening where like
you think it's so kind of siloed and it's just the, machine learning doing all the work for you and all that. But then there comes this community aspect where you're both kind of, looking at it and contributing. That's neat. That kind of changes my perspective a little of thinking like, oh man, what's going to happen to art? What's going to happen to like real artists and things like that,
It does definitely adds another layer to it.
Yeah.
I think it gets a little more interesting. And, thinking about it, again, one of my goals was to really think about, what does it mean in our process, like you're saying? And Matt, I don't know if you definitely thought about this, which is like, what is authorship or ownership mean in this context? And also, what does automation mean, for design? What will designers be doing? Again, we've been doing it one way. And of course, I think we end up thinking about it in a very monolithic way, like, oh, this is how design always been done. And that's not the truth. The design has changed.
Too long ago, we were cutting out things with X-Acto blades.
With Ruby Lith.
I mean, I wasn't. I don't know. I'm talking before me, but
I was right at the tail end of that. But yeah, like the thing is, we've always adapted and changed. Yeah. We've always changed our story in terms of value as creative designers, what we bring to the table. And that's not saying that like some jobs might be automated, and that is the progression of human culture and society, and technology. That definitely happens. But on the other flip side, like, well, what's the potential? And that's why I've really been digging into this. And Matt, in your conversations with Howard, have you guys been talking about similar sort of topics? Like what's been the combo over there?
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got the obviously immediate conversation of what does this do to art, but the other conversation is what does it do to the product design world or general design or other design fields? And I mean, when you look at it, in many ways, we've been working towards this slowly as product designers, building out design systems. Like, how do we automate processes so that we can do this faster and we don't have to do the manual work, or we just borrow these elements that are proven. And so those are all things that, I mean, I think it was Airbnb years ago was working on this. But those are all things that become automated, and a computer can look at it and be like, oh yeah, this is this, and learn the context for when to use it, which is interesting. And yes, that would make you think or feel fearful that your job is going to be automated. But again, it just changes the work we do. And I think there's probably going to be a place where that happens more and more. And it gets more people in the design realm. But it changes the work we focus on, and focuses more on, maybe we're working more on testing or
ideas,
feeding the context and kind of teaching the system what's best and what should work. So yeah, I mean, it's almost inevitable, I think, that there's some adoption of this as we go. But yeah, it's fascinating. It's a little scary.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like two things, and I love what you're saying, Matt, is that, I think we do have the power and the ability to take a tool and then to now figure out what we then do with it. How does design change, given, automation,
right.
But there's one thing I think that's still really important for us to wrestle with in all of this. And so it comes from my thinking. I've been reading this book, really fascinating book, and I'm not going to remember the author's name. But the book's called The Craftsman.
Okay.
And it's a very academic book, honestly. It's a very sort of philosophical academic book. And so it's a little impenetrable in that sense. But I've been sort of reading it now over a period of months, trying to work my way through it. And there's one thing that I think that's the important thing for us to wrestle with is, and I think this is, again, it's something that I think a lot of designers feel, even with design systems, which is agency, right? Is that one of the important elements of being a craftsman, and I put design in squarely in that term. Are we artists? I think we can debate that, but we sure are craftsmen when it comes right down to it. And one of the things that I think I've been wrestling with, I know a lot of people have when it comes to design systems, and we've all seen the memes, is that is what choice, like, it doesn't give me any choice as a designer. And one of the important things as a craftsman, as a designer, that I prioritize is the ability to make choices. And anytime a system or a tool is taking away agency, I think we can feel it. I think we can feel it. And I think that's been the case even in, tools, we've all seen it. They'll just like spit out a result for you, and you're like, oh, wait, what did you just do there?
Remix this,
I need a little more control. I need a little more agency on that. And so even before automation, we were dealing, or AI, ML automation, we were dealing with tools, and we all knew it. And we all tended to gravitate away from those tools when we were sort of automating it too much. And it was almost like a black box. You didn't understand how it got there.
Yeah.
Thus it became kind of a one-trick pony, I think that's where I think we can feel a loss of agency and a loss of value as designers, is when some amount of agency is being taken away from us. And that historically has been the trend of any craftsman, is any time agency has been taken away from you, you can feel it. And also people can see the results. The results aren't as good. I think that a lot of people just assume like, oh, I have a design system. Now we're set. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's one. And I think the other element of it, to me, which again kind of follows along in that, is in the experience of using DALL-E and Midjourney, it still requires as much knowledge of what the tool can do, or even some amount of knowledge of how it's doing it, to make really great use of it. And that's no different from any tool in the past. That there were those people who spend the time and effort, who are going to be always a smaller subset of the overall whole of the users that are using a tool, designers, who are able to kind of almost like, mold it to their will, and they understand, they read the documentation, and they're able then to think a little bit ahead and project what they're trying to do, and then utilize all the dials and controls to get the result. Right. It's been the same in Photoshop. It's been the same in Illustrator. Like, those are hard tools to use. You've got to be really invested. Oftentimes, again, it's a real small set of the population that's actually doing that, and everyone else is just kind of learning from each other, shared knowledge, So it still requires, there's still a lot of overhead to using Midjourney and DALL-E to get a good, more than one note result, we'll say,
Yeah.
right? So you could do your Tiger airplane thing, and someone else could do Tiger airplane, and they could get something
totally different.
Totally different.
Yeah.
But they're all kind of operating at the same level. They're all kind of one note, you know?
Yeah.
Like, but if you know, like in Midjourney has this amazing documentation, and you can go in there and there's a number of settings that you can tweak.
Yeah.
But again, you have to be really invested and spend more time to understand that. So I think, because the way we use it today, and I think if anyone's dabbled with it, it's actually kind of not dissimilar to some of the things that the effects or things that you would use in Photoshop, where you're like, let me try this. And then you get a result and you're like, I don't really like that. And you almost have to start over. You have to go almost all the way back and then start over.
Right.
Right.
Peel back all those layers.
Yeah.
Literally. Well, I mean, you're a photographer by hobby.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, or more than hobby. I think.
Yeah.
But like, you know, are photographers nervous about like Dolly and these platforms or stock companies like our own? I'm thinking of like, because I don't know what the legality or the royalties or any of that will be. Like, if you generate a new image, is that totally just royalty free? Like, how does?
That's a great question. I think there's a lot of things there too. Honestly, that's a great sort of topic.
Yeah.
And then again, that gets back to authorship, ownership.
Yeah.
Copyright, right? Copyrights is still a relatively recent invention.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think technology is going to continue to push on what that means.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I was always just thinking about like photographers and like artists too. But sorry, back to like automation and things like that too. I can think of some things I wish were designed for me though, in a good way. I can think of some like tables. Oh, like I don't ever want to design a table again. You know, something else can do it for me. I think there's a lot of cool ideas with design systems if you can kind of plug in all the details, the CSS, the branding, you know, things, and it generated it all for you. Like, wouldn't be the worst starting point, because like if you're like a designer at a company, you're like, hey, we don't have a design system, make one. I mean, gosh, that's like a big undertaking. Yeah.
You're right. I think there's a lot of like those types of tasks that will, out of necessity, I think, be automated. To some extent. And Matt, you were correct in saying like design systems we've been on this thread, right, for a while.
Yeah.
I've always wondered though, like, and being back to like the craftsman aspect of it, is that there is an element though of, again, talk about choices, talk about agency, that and Matt, you know, you were just talking about some of the manual tasks that you're undertaking in preparing for winter. There is something about repetition that is important to like the craftsman or the designer, where as you're doing something, and you might be doing the same task for the nth time, for the 100th time, we'll say, like I've drawn a button 100 times, right? The craftsman is, every time they're doing something, is learning from that experience, and they're exactly. So there is something to be said about what we're losing when we allow automation to just take care of all the decisions for us. You know. There's a great story I tell about a designer, and I'll let this designer remain nameless.
Okay.
But this designer, every time they were working on my team, we create presentation decks.
Okay.
You know? And without fail, this designer, they love to completely redesign their presentation template for every project they're working on.
Okay.
So that could have been last week, it could have been last month. Guaranteed, the next time this designer was creating a new concept or idea, they were redesigning their whole deck.
Okay.
And of course, we're one team, and I was like, we should be using the same consistent template of the presentation deck, so that we all look like this is coming from us, and that we're consistent with our messaging, we're on brand, blah, blah, blah. All these things are important. And I kind of took away that person's agency in doing that. And I realized as I stepped back from that designer actually needed to do that every time. And that was in some way their brain, their mind, their creative process, kind of like starting the engine, getting itself up and running, in a way, doing something that might seem kind of unrelated to the feature that they were designing, but was as important to the process. And so that's where I think automation, we have to be really careful, which is like, when are we taking away agency? When does repetition actually improve our end results? And there's that Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours idea and all that stuff, right? Like we start touching up against that. Like, if we just give a brand new designer a design system and be like, and expect them to be good,
right?
Are we kidding ourselves? Like, what are we taking away from the conversation?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I found the times I'm working within a system, or I mean, repetition goes both ways too. When you're working within a system, sometimes you need that like creative break of give me no constraints. I just need to go free form for a little bit, kind of make some mistakes, learn from them, and then come back and apply that within the constraint system. And on the topic of the preparations for winter, I think that was very clear. I just stacked a pile of wood because I have a wood stove now in my house and country living. And the more and more wood you stack over hours and hours, you start to refine your system, whether it's slowing down to stack things with smaller gaps in them, or getting really tired and just speeding up and then kind of throwing stuff willy-nilly. But you learn to refine it, and you learn tips and tricks as you go. To at the end, you've got like a perfectly set stack of wood, and everything's not going to fall off, and it's tarped perfectly. So there is, merit to that repetition and learning.
Yeah.
And I think the future is some combination of that from the people that can answer the why and the what, and pair that with the system that's actually going to do the work. So after we've kind of proven something out, then it's like it hits a point and you can pass that on to a system and then go on to the next learning. So there's definitely a partnership there, I think.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
It makes me think about, I watched, this was early, again, I always, so many things outside of my day job influences what I end up doing. And so I have a wide range of interests because it all kind of funnels back in some way, even though it could seem wholly disparate. But I was watching this this YouTube documentary on a guitar maker, right?
Oh, cool.
And he was talking about his process of how it has changed in making guitars over time, and how he ended up he was using this tool. I don't remember exactly what tool it was, but he found he couldn't do exactly what, and he repeated the steps so much, he reached this, like, he kept feeling this barrier. And he was like, I'm not doing this as efficiently as I could. I'm not, this tool, whatever I'm using right now, is not sufficient for the job. And so he went and he slowly like molded this tool to his needs. He shaved down a little bit here. Yeah. He tweaked it a little bit here. He molded it in this different way. And suddenly now this tool that was, again, made to be very specific in the first place has now become even more specialized to help this person in their process.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting sort of like commentary on tools, that rather than tools shaping us, we should really be shaping the tools to our ends. And I think that matches with what you're sort of saying, Matt, which is like, as you do something repetitively over enough times, like you find little improvements, and your brain is working these things out and finding efficiencies and finding new ways of being, new ways of doing. And in the end, like, you end up somewhere sometimes entirely different from where you started.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that if there's one thing, the trend in tools that I think that we should question, which is like with automation, is it's like, again, it's funneling it down too far to where now the designer has lost all agency.
I agree, because like, I mean, I used to design in Photoshop, like websites and apps, and like, you know, you're pretty limited, but I think what I loved and what just drove my passion for it was just finding, you can do one thing in Photoshop 50 million different ways, and like finding how to accomplish something and like just celebrate, like, yes, I did this thing today in Photoshop, but like now tools do so much for you, and it kind of takes away, I don't know, that special moment and that learning and that imagination.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go too far into automation and like, you know, lose some of that.
You know, and there's also benefits. Like on one end, you have you know, something like a Canva, which is a tool that's putting something forward that's very different from the experience and the paradigms of other tools.
Right.
And it's opening the door to many new people who've never been able to use a Photoshop or Illustrator, and that's really amazing, right? Like that's a tool that idea should be celebrated. But at the end of the day, like, it can also feel unsatisfying, you know, to utilize a tool that is very you know, sort of almost like automation forward in a way. It can feel unsatisfying. So there is a balance. It's like, how do you find that balance where like you can open the door, you can lower the barriers, right? You don't have to learn all of Photoshop, because that's daunting, right? You don't have to understand why Illustrator has 2 selection tools. As one of my former mentors asked me in my very early days of Adobe, why does Illustrator have 2 selection tools? And I'd be like, oh, let me tell you why, because I always loved Illustrator.
AMD all day.
Yeah, I was like, let me tell you, this is why. He's like, no, step back.
Yeah.
Why? You know, like if you're not a pro, if you're not an insider,
why do I need to switch cursors? What's going on?
Exactly. So, you know, like there is a barrier to that, but on the other side, we can almost swing too far, and we can almost like black box it to the point where like it's usable, like I said, but it's one note. It's like you can do this thing, and that might be valuable in that moment, but you're not going to take it any further. You know, it's just going to be like, here it is. This is the output. And that might be great, but what are we leaving out? And is there some middle ground, you know, and all that. So
I think that comes back to an interesting question as designers, especially in the product design UX world. I know I've been one of these people, but we can get very attached to tools.
Mm-hmm.
We get very into tools kind of being a core piece of our process. And I mean, as we've seen, tools come and go, tools change over time. What would you say? We were kind of talking about this at the beginning with workflows, but workflows and tools. As a new designer coming in, where should I really spend my time in learning? Because I'm finding a lot of new designers that I talk to and mentor, they're asking the questions of what tool should I learn? Not necessarily what workflow should I learn. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Talin.
I might be a little biased because I went to art school, which I know is not everybody's experience.
My experience.
Yeah. I mean,
so all Adobe. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Not my experience.
No, you know, like, and I chose art school for a very specific reason because I think that again, like learning a tool, you could learn any tool, and I think you'll be able to do well with it. Like, and I think that's, to me, if you put like new designers at ease, is that there might be a tool requirement for your job, and that might be, again, that could be the case.
Or client.
Yeah. And but I have faith that most designers today grew up in a digital world, right? That the overhead for moving between tools has been lessened because we're just more familiar with the concepts overall.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that is something that everyone can kind of rest on. It's like, well, whatever tool you're using, you know, you still should be able to communicate an idea in that tool. And there might be some overhead, and you'll definitely have to deal with that in learning a new tool. But it's not as bad as it used to be. Right. You know, I think, you know, the divide between Photoshop and Illustrator users from just a core like creation paradigm is hard. Yeah. Not gonna, like, that's one, but like, you know, everything that's sort of come after, like, you know, you could use any number of tools to communicate your ideas, and you might have specific needs. I'm going to output this for my developer in this way, or my client wants this tool.
Or I got to print something.
Yeah, to me, it's more so like focusing on like the core tools of the designer, which is about color and shape and hierarchy and layout and typography. Like, those are the foundations that I think, again, where tools have already automated a lot of that for you, and you can feel a real hollowing out of quality, I'll say, in design because of an over reliance on tools. And so, you know, I don't know, you know, that's a hard message, I think, to give to new designers, to be like, well, yes, you can use the tool, but the tool isn't going to help you in learning these other things that you need to know.
Yeah.
But if you know that, if you have a foundation of understanding of, you know,
what you're trying to accomplish,
exactly. Like,
and the speed will come. You know, like, I think maybe that's why they're asking to, just like, it's a daunting if you start a new job and you have to use a whole new set of tools.
It can be. Yeah. It can be. But if you have that other foundation, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which tool you have or have to use. You know, I designed the first UI for XD in Keynote. So again, like, the tool isn't the hindering factor here. Like, the tool you shape to your needs, not the other way around.
Right. You know? I went to a pretty traditional art school. Like, we didn't touch software for like the first 2 years. I mean, but we're all using it in the background anyway. But I remember this one class I had my first semester where we learned Cinema 4D, After Effects, Photoshop. Like, we went through so many different tool sets, and like, that was the most exciting class because, like, loved learning all the tools. So I say learn them all.
As many as you can. Like, there's,
and then come tell us about it. And you come and talk to us. Yeah,
I think tools are really just where you apply your principles of learning. And I was going to say tools are the vehicle for getting design done, and then that led me into a whole vehicle metaphor. Like, you don't learn to drive just the vehicle you take your driver's test in. You're learning the principles and how to drive, and that should be able to apply to many different vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not like transport trucks. Maybe there's the metaphor breaks down, but the principle is still there. Learn the principles, learn the basics, and then explore applying those in different places, different tools.
And you know, honestly, well, actually, it was fun. Your metaphor was great because I was just in the UK driving a stick shift on the wrong side of the vehicle on the wrong side of the road from how I learned. So I was on the opposite side of the road. So I was on the left side of the road and I was driving stick with my left hand.
Oh boy.
And I was on the right side of the car.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah.
Wild. That was an amazing experience. But
yes, you were thinking. Yeah.
But yeah, Matt, it's a really great point. And I just lost the thought. I was going to follow it up, and then I got distracted by my
vehicle
metaphor. Ah, geez, it was good.
That's right. We'll keep on driving.
It was going somewhere.
It's going somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'll have to wait to come back to it. So, but yeah.
Well, we're coming up on time here. Talin, any advice for new designers, existing designers that want to grow their career? You've seen a lot of things, touched a lot of tools, explored a lot of workflows. What's like one piece of advice you would leave designers with?
Well, of course, now that you say that, I just remember what I was going to say, which I think is related. Which is that I'm not going to deny right now that I think it's hard for especially digital designers to find a foundation of some of those core visual communication principles. You know, the things that you and I would learn at design school.
Yeah.
It was a very different context. There was a foundation of academic thought when it comes to typography and layout and color theory. Yeah. But I think the book is unwritten for digital right now. And I think that makes it a little harder to find those resources. I will say though that some of those foundational tools that I learned that again might have been a little more print focused at the time, still apply. But like there hasn't been sort of the definitive academic book written on layout for digital.
Yeah.
There are people talking about and thinking about that out there, and I encourage everyone, especially new designers, to go and find that out, to look for those resources, to look again beyond the tool and look more at those sort of foundational principles of UX, UI design, as well as digital visual layout.
Yeah.
Those are the things I think will help you a lot. And then I also just generally say that again, like sort of getting back to the sort of craftsman aspect of all of this is that it all adds up. The things that you're interested and excited by and curious about are having an impact on your day-to-day work and will come out in your work in some way, whether you see it or not directly. And so to have a wide range of interests, I think those things will influence your work in really positive ways. And actually, there'll be a little more depth there. I think if you're seeing the world in a much more broader way and taking in these influences and being interested. Like I said, your brain is always doing design in a way. And if you can find ways to continue to sort of feed that, you will find again, the impact on your work to be immeasurable, I'd say. So
that's a good answer. What about you, Matt? Do you have any advice for new or young?
The tables turn. Wow.
Yeah.
Unexpected. No, I mean, it's hard to beat that advice. I'd say all of your experiences lead up, and that's something I've found too. So like outside of work, like Talin said, go find different experiences and interests, but even within work, I've been in a different industry in every job I've been in. And I think each one you can borrow from and expand on as you go into your next job or field or industry. And you learn different things about different users. So it gives you perspective that you can build kind of this global picture of how people work all over and in different industries. So there's good in repetition and long-standing learning, but there's also a lot of value in kind of popping around and exploring different projects and workflows too, and tools.
Great point. How about you, Caity? What do you got for those up and comers?
I'll change a little course here. I'd say with everything opening back up, if you can, go to design events, go to talks, go support your design community, whether it's AIGA or creative mornings. That's my favorite in New York. Yeah. Just get back out there and start talking to designers, creatives, and other fields and industries. Slight plug for Adobe Max. In October is free and virtual and in person. So, I'm definitely going to be on Adobe Max this year. Like that's when I try to learn like 3D, like Substance and all those tools, because they're hard to use and it's free to learn. So it's a good week to just I plug my laptop to my TV at home and like just like kind of follow along with an instructor. So
there are so many different ways, I think, to be a creative now, and I think that things will continue to change and to grow. But again, people who are able to think very deeply and critically about a problem and then be able to communicate that visually in some way, it's never been a better time, I think, to do that. So
definitely. I was going to say at the beginning, like design's having a moment, but no, I think it's more than a moment.
Yeah.
Moment's fleeting. And
it's being enabled in new ways.
Yes, we're definitely, it's a good time in the industry.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Well, Talin. Thanks for joining us today here in New York.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me sort of bug you and invite myself on.
Anytime. And thanks everyone for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. All right, Matt.
All right. Until next time.
All right.
Thanks, Talin.
See ya. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Caity.